MSW Media. Thank you to HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit, for sponsoring this episode. Go to HelloFresh.com/dailybeans50 and use code dailybeans50 for 50% off plus free shipping.
News with swearing. Daily beans, daily beans. Daily beans, daily beans.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Beans for Tuesday, August 8th, 2023. It is a very special edition of the Daily Beans today. We're recording this in late July to play on August 8th because we're going to be out that week. The Beans will be dark because, everybody needs a little vacation every now and again. So I am here with a very good friend of mine, former federal prosecutor and host of the It's Complicated podcast with Asha Rangappa, Renato Mariotti. Hi, Renato. How are you?
Good. Happy to be here.
I'm really, really glad I get to talk to you. And this is going to be an interesting exercise in time travel because we are recording this on July 23rd. And we're going to be discussing the four big potential and already existing charges of the former president of the United States and the timeline and the scheduling and all that, how all that looks. But by the time people listen to this, by the time this interview airs, we may have charges that have not been voted on yet, or at least haven't been shown to the public. And we're thinking particularly of the January 6th, the attempted coup charges for Donald Trump and potentially others, although not anyone else has received a target letter, but we will talk about that when we get to it. But I want to kick this off with the Manhattan DA charges. Manhattan DA, that's Alvin Bragg. He was the first to go. And he went with, this was a 5-year-old crime, 6 years now, but 5 years at the time. And that's the hush money payment, but not just the Stormy Daniels hush money payment, but the Karen McDougal and the doorman and, that kind of, catch and kill almost vibe. But these charges are, I believe, 34, a felony falsification of business records charges. Now, a lot of people, I think, are sleeping on this one, although maybe there's just so many charges, it's hard to be super into all of them.
Yeah, that's right. I think, look, if you're going to have a set of indictments that somebody faces, there's always going to have to be one at the bottom. So if we were doing the, fantasy indictment draft, so to speak, this would be the last draft pick. Okay, I wouldn't pick this in the first 3 rounds of our 4-round draft, and for a lot of reasons. That said, I think one thing when we say where people are sleeping on, I think one thing that people don't capture, don't understand, is how difficult it is to defend a war on multiple legal fronts at the same time. It's much more challenging than you might think. I've done it before. It's really hard when you are in the defense and your client has criminal charges in multiple jurisdictions. In Trump's case, of course, he also has civil cases that he's got in multiple jurisdictions. So he's in a tough spot. I think that is really what I see as the main downside for Trump from the Manhattan DA charges. Yes, he may get convicted. Yes, they're felony charges, although albeit the lowest level of felony in New York. But I think the thing is, if you're Trump's team, you want to be focused like a laser on this documents case, January 6th case, some of these massive cases. You have a tremendous liability, and instead you have to try the Manhattan DA case before you get there, and you got to focus on defending him in that case as well. So it's just, I think, a challenge for them.
Yeah, it's a lot. And he's had a hard time putting together a legal team. You would expect a former president to have a very robust, incredible legal team made up by white shoe lawyers from white shoe law firms. And that's just not the case. I think he's got 2. I think he's down to 2 lawyers at this moment. And then, of course, he farms out his friend Stanley Woodward for everybody else at the lower levels. But recently, Trump was denied a motion to move this trial to federal court. He wanted to do so because one of the underlying crimes that elevates the falsification of business records charge from a misdemeanor to a felony, one of those underlying crimes is a federal crime. And so he thought, based on that he should be able to move his trial to the federal courts, presumably so that maybe he could get a pardon
Huh.
if a Republican were elected, or if he were elected and he wanted to self-pardon or shut that case down if it were still going on. I can't think of another reason he would want to move it to a federal court, but what do you think?
I'll give you two reasons why. One reason is the judge, the state court judge that he's in front of, already ruled against the Trump organization in a state criminal case. And Trump, I think famously, rather, when he thinks a judge is against him, it's like he gets very dour about that. It's not that judges potentially were open-minded but saw the facts differently, or there's no honest disagreement of opinion. If you didn't rule his way, you're a bad judge and you're out to get him, and so on. So I think that's probably a big driver of this. The judge here ruled, that the Trump organization, presided over the trial in which the Trump organization was found guilty of a felony. So I think that's a big part of it. Another thing is delay. Moving it to federal court just, restarts everything again, potentially. He already, as a judge, set a trial date in 2024. Probably didn't like that. Thought that maybe he could, toss the, re-roll the dice, so to speak. Hope that he gets a new pick who might be a little bit slower moving.
Yeah, and let's talk about that. Let's move on from the Manhattan charges over to the documents, Mar-a-Lago federal charges that occurred down in Miami, because I don't know that it would behoove him to move the March trial date for the Manhattan DA, because when Judge Aileen Cannon was weighing when to schedule the trial, she had asked if it was possible to move the March the trial in Manhattan, because perhaps she was thinking maybe we could get March. She thought December was too soon based on the amount of evidence and SEPA stuff that has to go on between now and then. January, and possibly January into February, is taken up by E. Jean Carroll 1, the first E. Jean Carroll trial. The second one has already been finished and decided, and she was awarded $5 million in that case. And then March and potentially April are taken up by the Manhattan District Attorney case. And so May really was kind of the next closest time that she could pick, because it seems like Trump's dance card is filling up fairly quickly for 2024.
Yes. That's, although it's a challenge for Trump to be facing all these legal problems at the same time, it does enable delay, because judges will frequently, you're dealing with the defense team. The defendant has a right to have counsel of his choice, and a lot of times counsel are very busy. I will confess that there more than one time, even recently, I've presented my calendar to judges asking for more time for my clients and explaining how I'm busy cases across the country. That is just part of the way the system works. So yeah, I think that it's true that if the Manhattan DA case got moved, then that would potentially open up an early trial date for the documents case. I just think there's a supreme confidence in the Trump team on the documents case of being able to push that. Mm-hmm. And there's a number of reasons why, one of which is that in a classified documents case, there are many more tools in the defense toolbox to create delay. There's a statute called SIPA that allows for interlocutory appeal. So the appeal happens before the trial ends. Plus, the defense can make all sorts of crazy discovery demands that the government's going to find insane and fight about all of those, because they'll say, well, even though you don't want to give us all these other classified documents, we think that it's really important to draw the contrast for our defense between the attack on, a totally different country we were planning that's totally secret, and to compare with Iran or whatever, the attack on Iran. So that sort of thing. So, and I think they also have Aileen Cannon, right? Is there ace in the hole? So I think they're probably thinking, yeah, we're not going to try that case anytime soon. So let's push off the Manhattan DA as far as we can and hope maybe that delays January 6th or something else.
Exactly. And every single expert I've spoken to, well, some have said they didn't think that the December 11th trial date was out of the ordinary or unachievable, that it would have gotten pushed back probably, but that it could have been scheduled for then. I mean, her initial schedule was August 14th. But I think once she saw how much discovery, 1,500 plus pages of classified documents, over 1 million pages of other documents of evidence, hundreds of hours of surveillance footage, even though the timestamps that are relevant were provided, it is a lot of evidence to go through. But, a lot of folks I've spoken to thought that December 11th was a reasonable date. But most other experts I've spoken to say even if that were the case, they didn't think that this was going to happen before summer of next year, with many thinking still probably after the election because of the CIPA considerations, Confidential Information Procedures Act, right?
Right.
There's all sorts of different, like you said, opportunities for delay there that are fairly normal in these cases that include classified documents. And this case has more classified documents than your usual CIPA case. From the experts we've spoken to, Brian Greer, former CIA Assistant General Counsel, for example, has 31 is a lot of documents to have to manage. And so I think you also kind of had more realistic expectations about when this trial might happen.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, people got their hopes up. There's a big difference between could and would. Could there be a trial in December 2023? Okay, sure. Could there be a trial in very early 2024? Sure. Is that possible? Anything's possible. If everyone was on the same page and like the judge and the defense, everyone was trying to push it that quickly, anything's possible. And I will give Jack Smith credit. He's doing everything he can. Like you mentioned, he's giving him the timestamps and saying, here's the most important documents. But the defense, to be fair, the defense is not going to take the government's word for it. So they're going to want to review everything. Could they review it quickly? Yeah. Could they review it quickly? Sure. Are they going to? No, because that's what the defense says. they create delay. That's part of the defense playbook.
Yeah, part of the process, part of the normal kind of way things go. So we'll see what happens there. But the dance card is filling up pretty quickly, and that could impact future indictments and future court cases, which I want to talk about. But I do need to take a quick break. So everybody stick around. We'll be right back with Renato Mariotti.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Hey, everybody, I need to take a moment to talk about HelloFresh, the perfect solution for hassle-free cooking. They deliver fresh ingredients and easy-to-follow recipes right to your home, turning meal prep from a chore to a delight. You've got places to be, and standing in the checkout line is not one of them. Leave the meal planning and grocery shopping to HelloFresh. Go to hellofresh.com/50dailybeans and use code 50dailybeans for 50% off plus free shipping. A few days ago, I was running behind. Luckily, HelloFresh had a quick and easy meal because I'm on the go all the time. Just 30 minutes later, I had their blackened catfish with crispy roasted potatoes and caramelized vegetables. It was fresh, it was tasty, it was delicious, and I was able to get back on schedule. So if your family is snackish, HelloFresh lets you supplement your weekly order with over 100 additional snacks, sides, and more. Plus, they keep dinner exciting with 40 chef-designed recipes each week, spanning categories like family-friendly and fit and wholesome. And if you're too busy for a grocery run, HelloFresh has you covered. It's 25% cheaper than takeout and less pricey than the grocery shopping. Enjoy the flavors of the journey of home cooking thanks to HelloFresh. Take a bite out of summer. Go to hellofresh.com/50dailybeans and use code 50dailybeans for 50% off plus free shipping. Everybody, welcome back. We're talking with former federal prosecutor, amazing lawyer, a great legal mind, MSNBC contributor, my friend, host of the It's Complicated podcast with Asha Rangappa. It's on the MSW Media Network. You need to check out. It's a really, really good podcast. Renato Mariotti. Before the break, we were talking about the 2024 court to criminal dance card for the former president of the United States and how it's filling up quite a bit. And, you know, for a very long time now, I think since 2021, I've been like, this is all going to happen in 2023. And that means all the trials are going to take place in 2024 and maybe even beyond. So I've been kind of prepared for this. I know a lot of folks haven't been, but we are now on the precipice of additional indictments because the former president got a target letter from the Department of Justice, Special Counsel's office, Jack Smith's office, that he is a target for criminal indictment for the events surrounding January 6th, which I call it a coup. And that's, you know, a lot of people will just refer to it as that day, but there's so much more to it than that. What do you think of these charges? I mean, we were expecting the defrauding of the conspiracy to defraud the United States. We were expecting obstructing an official proceeding, which Rolling Stone referred to as witness tampering, but I think they mean obstructing an official proceeding. But the 241 charge is something, I mean, some people had thought about that earlier, but the conspiracy against rights. Can we talk a little bit about that charge and how it might apply to what Donald Trump did?
Yeah, that one is a bit of a head scratcher. The reason I say that is because it can mean a lot of different things. We're getting like secondhand reports. It's like a game of telephone when you're trying to your teenager is saying what you're learning it from the younger kid, what the teenager said, whatever. Whenever you have multiple steps in the telephone tree, you're always going to have something that's garbled. So one thing that I'm not sure about is this about depriving, for example, the citizens of states where they were trying to have fake electors of their votes? Like if that, was a way of capturing that piece of it, that's possible. What were they trying to, what was it's unclear to me, I guess what I'm saying. I have too little information.
How it's going to be applied.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it could also be a conspiracy against our rights to a peaceful transfer of power. As a citizenry. It could be a conspiracy against the rights of Mike Pence, who was only doing his job that day.
That's possible too. Sure.
Could be when he sent the mob. That could be a conspiracy to deprive us of our rights of a peaceful transfer of power by delaying the official proceeding of the electoral count, us of our votes. Recently, a right-wing provocateur named Ricky Vaughn was convicted of 241. And that was for depriving people of their right to vote by convincing them that they could text vote to vote for Hillary from home. And they didn't have to go to the polls that day. And he was convicted of 241. It carries a maximum 10-year sentence. But it's going to be interesting to see how this applies. If it has to do with the mob at the Capitol or the peaceful transfer of power, or like you said, the fraudulent elector scheme, or perhaps something else that I'm not thinking of right now. And that is just something that we won't know until we can read what will probably be, if it's consistent with the other indictments that have come out of Jack Smith's workshop there, will be a speaking indictment with a lot of great detail about what happened and why the charges apply.
Yeah. So like for all of you who are listening to this now in August, obviously we don't know. You may know if you're listening to this, what's in the indictment. We don't know right now in July 23rd. But I think one thing that's interesting to me when I think of this, because it's something, obviously it's an indictment I've thought about for a while, is some of the charges that aren't included. So, for example, there's nothing in there about inciting an insurrection. Mm-hmm. There would have been a huge legal challenge to that, a First Amendment challenge, but it's an obvious sort of charge because you had this guy, inciting people and saying all sorts of inflammatory things in the rotunda in the ellipse. And then suddenly, they all storm to the Capitol and attack a bunch of people and hurt them. It's a pretty obvious charge to consider. They could have charged, let's say, false statement in a 1001 count, false statement in a federal proceeding, given that the counting of the electoral votes is a federal proceeding. All those fake elector certificates are false statements. So there's a lot of different ways he could have gone. Jack Smith made some choices. It'll probably make more sense when we see the full indictment. Also, one thing that is an interesting question and that dovetails into this is, did he leave some charges on the table in order to have a more narrow indictment so that he could get this to trial quicker? I don't know the answer to that question. I haven't even seen the indictment, but I think it's another open question is, will this case get to trial before the election? It's a little bit harder to tell because unlike maybe everyone listening to this, I don't know what the indictment is. And I think, that is definitely got to play into his reasoning because, of course, this indictment's coming weeks later than the documents case. And, obviously, as you said, there's a very busy dance card.
Yeah, but it doesn't include classified documents. There wouldn't be any CIPA considerations. It's a faster docket. Well, maybe it's not a faster docket up there in D.C. because they're pretty backed up just all, from COVID. And then they've got 1,000+ January 6th cases going on.
Right.
That they've been dealing with. But it doesn't seem also to include the big fraud, which seems like a very easy wire fraud case for defrauding donors for the election defense fund that didn't exist. But I also have been told that what is put in a target letter is not necessarily an exhaustive list of charges.
That's true. One thing, I think that's exactly right. We don't know exactly what the indictment's going to look like. I think that's fair. It's also that game of telephone. Like I said, we don't know exactly, you had even surmised, right? From the initial set of charges we got, maybe they got one of them wrong, that sort of thing. We don't know. One thing that I will say, to me, when I look at what the biggest reason, the biggest difference between the documents case and this one that might lead this one to go to trial faster, is simply that it's in DC. And thus, you have a greater chance of having a judge who's going to have a pre-existing view of Trump and or familiarity with Trump's team or these particular this fact pattern. And I think it's important because if, for example, there was an indictment of Allison Gill, okay, or Renato Mariotti, a judge is going to presume that you and I are acting in good faith. We're trying our best. Our attorneys, might be overwhelmed and busy with other cases, but they're being as diligent as possible. If a judge has that view, it's very easy for the defense to get a lot of extra time and to kind of, take advantage of that patience the judge is going to have, because the judge wants you to have a fair trial. And frankly, as you said, a lot of these judges are overwhelmed with cases. But if a judge in DC like Beryl Howell or Amy Berman Jackson has already had a lot of experience with this is not their first rodeo with the Trump team and Trump defense, they might have a different view. And I think that's the real hope that Smith has to have to get this case done before the election, because a judge like that might be motivated to really put this on a fast track.
Yeah, and I have a question for you as a prosecutor. Is there a potential or a possibility for the special counsel maybe to speak with Robbie Kaplan, E. Jean Carroll's lawyer, and maybe file a joint agreement motion to delay her trial so she can bow out for a January, if there's something available on the docket, a January, February trial for the potential coup charges?
Yeah, that's possible. It's ordinarily in a typical case, this would be very rare. You would never. So, because obviously Robbie's got a responsibility to her client,
right,
to advise her client and advance her client's interest. And her client's interest is to get her case going as quickly as possible. But in this circumstance, obviously, I think that's certainly on the table. This is a very weird situation. I mean, I don't think sometimes listeners really comprehend, a lot of folks are like obviously very concerned and really want this trial to happen before the election. There's rarely that much energy about when you have a criminal trial, whether it happens before a particular date. This is a really interesting situation, so nothing would surprise me.
Yeah, and Robbie Kaplan's written in before to judges to alert them to the fact that Donald Trump was trying to use different cases against one another to delay both cases. So, I could see maybe something like that happening. And because if we don't have January, February, March or April or May or June now, we're looking into July. And if the May trial is delayed, like through SEPA for the documents case, which we think it will be, can it be pushed up to then? If that, there's going to be so much weird juggling that I don't think I've ever seen, at least in the last, 5 or 6 years I've been covering these kinds of things. And he also has besides that civil case in February, he's got the civil pyramid scheme case that he has to go through. So, there's just so much. And then, of course, he'll say, well, there's the primaries and there's Super Tuesday and then there's the convention and then the election. It's just going to be a constant pounding the table of, you're interfering with my election when, in fact, we were investigating you well before. So you're but running for president is interfering with our investigation, but we can't really go there. So it's just 2024 is really crowded right now.
Yeah, without a doubt. I read a column for Politico, and my analogy to the situation was R. Kelly, for example. R. Kelly was indicted everywhere. It seemed like he's indicted in New York and in federal court in Chicago and in state court in Chicago and in Minnesota and all over the place. And he had, all sorts of problems, and there he was able to delay certain trials and move up others and so on. But, obviously with Trump, you have the election is what sets us apart. One thing I will say, Cannon was very savvy to not use that as her reasoning for why she wanted things at a certain time. she's learning because she's some really silly mistakes last time, so she's learning. It'd be interesting. Like you said, I could see a Judge Howell in DC just saying, you know what, okay, May's opened up, we're going in May or whatever, but that's what it's going to take. And that I think that really is what is going to allow us or not allow us to know whether that's going to determine whether or not we have to deal with Trump in November, for example. It is insane that a judge's trial calendar could have such a massive impact on our election.
Yeah. And now let's bring in Fani Willis, because we still haven't even addressed Fani Willis. Oh, yeah. Imminent indictments. And we actually mean imminent now, back as opposed to back in January. But to be fair, she found out that the fraudulent electors in Georgia had not been offered an immunity deal by their attorney, and she was able to secure cooperation and immunity from 8 of the 16 electors, and that did delay the imminent announcement of her charges in that case. And we're going to see that probably it's last week of July to the 3rd week of August, somewhere in there, which is right when you're listening to this. We might already have indictments dropping, but we got E. Jean in January, Pyramid Scheme in February, Manhattan DA in March, documents in May, January 6th, maybe in June or July. When does Fani get to go? Because I understand, though, that court is pretty backed up.
Yeah. I mean, look, state courts usually are slower than federal court in terms of getting to trial. And I don't really think her case is charged with the mentality that she's going to get there ahead of somebody else or at a specific time. Jack Smith, I think in the documents case, it's apparent that the guy really wants his case to go to trial before the election. Bless his heart. I don't know if that's going to happen, but he's trying. Fani Willis, I don't think has any illusions that that's going to happen. And I think she's okay with that. I mean, I think she wants to charge him because she thinks it's important. Sets a statement. It makes a statement that this violates Georgia law. Okay. And then secondly, her indictment would be very difficult to get a pardon on. And so I think, her mentality, she's like the tortoise and the hare. Like, she's just going to keep going and no one's going to stop her. And so no matter what this guy does in Washington, D.C., like, she's going to keep, pushing this forward.
Yeah. And, to be fair, whether he is the candidate for president, whether he is in the election, makes it to election day, whether he wins the election, nothing stops Fani Willis from continuing her work should she indict Donald Trump. And like you said, a pardon is very difficult because not only can a president not pardon a state case, but even in Georgia, the governor isn't the pardoning authority. They have a pardoning board. And if a Republican wins and it's somebody like Kemp, he's not Trump's best friend in the world. So that doesn't mean he won't indict him or pardon him or recommend to his pardoning board that he be pardoned. But it is even more difficult than in some other states to pardon the state case down in Georgia because they have that pardoning board. But we'll see what ends up happening. But I think that, some people wonder if justice will ever get here. The fact that he's going to be in and out of court, spending millions of dollars for the entire year next year, and that every day of his life is just going to be absolutely miserable. You were talking earlier about how difficult it is to just have one, be a criminal defendant in one case, let alone 4 or potentially 5 or 6 with civil suits. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of mental stress. It takes its toll on your health. Like Lawrence O'Donnell says, every day for the rest of his life is going to be worse than the day before. And so I think that might bring some folks a little modicum of justice, even though our system is moving quite slowly.
Yeah, I represent a lot of clients since I've left government, and I've had multiple clients consider committing suicide.
Mm-hmm.
I've had clients whose marriages have ended, businesses have gone kaput, clients who've had to sell everything to pay their legal bills. It's brutal. Get second mortgages on their home. And it is devastating to be under an indictment. And yes, this guy is not your typical person. That's true. But he's facing a lot of weight on him right now. He is, fighting for his life on so many different fronts. I can understand people getting frustrated that there's no accountability or no action a couple years ago. But at this point, when you have a guy's, been indicted twice, is on the precipice of being indicted 2 more times. That's a lot of accountability coming his way, and a lot of downside for him.
Yeah, I concur. And, for me, my definition of justice is, I know a lot of people want to see him in prison, convicted. But for me, it was indictments, because that is something I feel like as a voter, I have a little more control over. I get to vote for who's president. The president picks the attorney general, and the attorney general can indict people or appoint special counsel to indict people. What a jury does and what a judge decides is kind of beyond our reach, other than, we can vote for good presidents to appoint good judges. But what a jury does is kind of beyond our control. Justice is that to me, that these are about to go through our system, not necessarily how they come out the other side, but that they've been subjected to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, an indictment is a statement by a prosecutor essentially saying, I believe this is against the law. I think I have the evidence to prove this. That's what it basically says. Now, typically an indictment, it's not making a statement that way. Like, everyone knows bank robbery is against the law. Everyone knows that, you can't, traffic in heroin or whatever it might be. This is a different kind of case. And it's a statement by a prosecutor, but also by our government, saying that you can't try to, subvert our transfer of power in this country. You can't just steal classified documents. That's not how it works in the United States of America. So I do think that's an important statement. And like you said, there is a very robust process in this country. And I know a lot of people listening to this are frustrated by the process. They're like, this is BS. Why does it take so long? Why is it so slow? Why is it this? Why is it that? I welcome all of you into the criminal justice reform. 10, if you all want to come and join me and everyone else who's interested in reforming our system, that's great. But I think the fact that Donald Trump is part of that system, it does mean something in and of itself.
Yeah. That he has to go through our system of justice, but after being indicted, is accountability, regardless of the outcome in my mind. So thank you so much for talking through all these charges with me today. We may see more. There might be something like, we brought up the wire fraud thing. There could, his True Social is still under criminal investigation up in the Southern District. I mean, there's still all sorts of stuff going on, but thanks for talking through the big ones with me. And I really encourage everybody to listen to It's Complicated. You and Asha have such an amazing show. What around the August timeframe? What is it looking like? Do you have some cool guests lined up, or any particular interviews you definitely want to point people to, or some very important shows recently that have come out?
Well, one thing, you mentioned Brian Greer who's Secrets and Laws on Twitter, or X, as it's probably called by the time this comes out. And he's also on Threads with me as well. But he's been a guest host recently. We had some amazing episodes that have really looked at, his experience as Associate General Counsel of the CIA, and kind of taking a broad look at all, not only like, okay, here's how you compare this case to a lot of other cases he worked on, a lot of national security cases, but really debunking a lot of maybe some of the not so accurate takes that are out there on national security issues. That's been fantastic. And, I have to say, one thing that our podcast really is it's very fun. It's a lot more like Daily Beans than I sound. I know Asha's the fun one of the two of us, and we have a great chemistry. And so we have a lot of fun talking about everything from my dog to what the best seltzer water is, to her frequent vacation. So we have a lot of fun on that podcast.
And her steam mop reviews are very important. And her program for keeping your inbox clean has changed my life. All right, thanks everybody. Check out It's Complicated wherever you get your podcast. You can follow Renato Mariotti on Twitter and Threads and everywhere else probably. We've all gone and secured our handles on all of the different new social media apps that are popping up. But I appreciate your time today so much, and I thank you. So we will have you back again soon, and we'll talk again. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. We'll be back in your ears tomorrow with some more content. Until then, please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, take care of the planet, and take care of your mental health. Vote blue over Q and bring someone with you. I've been Allison Gill, and them's the beans. The Daily Beans is written and executive produced by Allison Gill, with additional research and reporting by Dana Goldberg. Sound design and editing is by Desiree McFarlane, with art and web design by Joelle Reeder with Moxie Design Studios. Music for The Daily Beans is written and performed by They Might Be Giants, and the show is a proud member of the MSW Media Network, a collection of creator-owned podcasts dedicated to news, politics, and justice. For more information, please visit mswmedia.com. MSW Media.
Hi, I'm Frances Callier.
And I'm Angela V. Shelton.
And we're Frangela.
You know what you need in your life? The Final Word podcast.
Yes, you do.
That's right. It is the final word on all things political and pop cultural.
Where we make real news real funny.
Where we inspire you so you can hashtag resist.
Subscribe and get a new episode of the Final Word podcast each week. It's the news we think you need to hear.
That's right. We think you need to hear it. Okay?
Yeah, it's what we say so.
That's right. And because all we do is give, every Thursday you can listen to our hysterical podcast, Idiot of the Week.
We round up the stupid because you know what? Somebody has to.
Okay. All we do is give.
You voted.
I did.
You protested.
Again.
You postcarded.
So many Sundays.
You posted on social media.
Got some likes.
And you're still reeling from all the terrible news.
Yeah, but what else can I do?
I'm Kelly.
I'm Lila.
And we're going to help you figure that out.
Each week, we'll interview people on the front lines of political action about the things they actually did to take action.
What got them started, who helped them along the way, and what they do differently if they had it to do all over again.
And in the process, we'll give you concrete advice about how to take the leap from freaking out on Twitter to making a difference.
Follow What Can I Do wherever you listen to podcasts, or tune in on whatcanidopodcast.com.